In Peru, social movements in Cusco provinces continue their mobilizations demanding President Dina Boluarte's resignation. Women from all over the world mobilized for International Women's Day to demand greater equality and protest sexist violence. And also in Georgia, the parliament withdrew a draft legislation on foreign agents in response to the violent protests that have taken place in the country. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. Social organizations in the Cusco provinces of Peru continue their mobilizations demanding the resignation of President Dina Boluarte. At least 10 provinces, including those with major mine projects, went on strike, affecting the mining companies of Las Bambas and Antapacay. Protesters, most of them coming from rural areas in the provinces, demanded the resignation of President Dina Boluarte, the dissolution of the Congress, immediate elections, and a new constitution. Social leaders reaffirmed that the Peruvian head of state must resign due to the violence carried out by security forces against the protesters, which began 3 months ago. So far, police repression has killed 60 people, mostly demonstrators gunned down by firearms. Social and farmers organizations in the Peruvian city of Puno began a general strike against the police violence and demanding the resignation of Dina Boluarte. Demonstrators stated that the protest that began this Tuesday will last until next Friday, with chances of running until the weekend. In this sense, the mobilization involved blocking transportation and commercial services to continue demanding the resignation of President Dina Boluarte and her cabinet. Puno residents also denounced the recent death of 6 young soldiers who tried to cross the Llave River in their way to control the demonstrations that took place over the weekend in the district of Juli. All of this is happening while the police repression is increasing as the nationwide protests continue. And women from all over the world mobilized for International Women's Day to demand greater equality and protest the sexist violence. As every March 8th, women were taken to the streets from Kabul to Bangkok on Wednesday to mark International Women's Day and to highlight the relevance of their struggles and their ongoing fight for their rights. Among the claims that are echoed worldwide is the continuous denouncement of gender inequality and the sexist violence. In an increasingly unequal world system, women's demands are not strange to the struggles of each nation, but rather aim to uncover the inherent violence of a system that's most cruel with the most vulnerable. Equal access to labor market, education, abortion, and reproductive rights, along with the acknowledgement of women's unpaid work, that's to say domestic labor, the care of children and the elderly, are some of the claims being echoed worldwide. And even though sexist violence in Latin America is far from eradicated, significant advances conquered by women movements have marked the last decade in the continent. Feminist movements have achieved long-sought advancements in different Latin American countries. The fight for pro-choice legislation that guarantees access to abortion has been at the center of the debate. Argentina finally sanctioned its legalization in 2020, while Mexico and Colombia have also taken steps against its criminalization. Likewise, different measures to counter violence against women have been conquered, with femicides being registered as a specific crime and different laws being passed to prevent sexist violence and harassment. In all, general awareness around gender inequality has raised as movements continue to demand accountability from the authorities. Such was the case of Mexico in November 2019, when, following massive feminist protests, the city government decreed an alert for violence against women, which prompted changes in state response. Several Brazilian cities commemorated International Women's Day with activities and mobilizations. The mobilizations in defense of women's rights on this March the 8th raised banners such as the fight against violence, hunger and fascism, as well as in defense of the environment and the right to land. In this regard, the movement of landless rural workers, the MST, has been mobilizing since March the 1st. Meanwhile, demonstrations are expected to take place throughout the day in the cities of Belém, Manaus, Natal, Brasilia, Campo Grande, and Sao Paulo, among others. In Argentina, feminist organizations and human rights activists marched in Buenos Aires in defense of equality and against gender violence. Members of the organization Ni Una Menos, that's Spanish for Not Woman Less, marched in the afternoon to the nation's Congress. For their part, members of the Legal, Safe and Free Abortion campaign demonstrated in favor of sexual and reproductive rights in the Plaza de Mayo in the Argentinian capital. Its members also demand the implementation of actions that guarantee respect for LGBTQI+ community. Furthermore, cultural activities and days of reflection and debate will be held in the country throughout the month. On this International Women's Day, Argentine women also demanded the freedom of imprisoned social leader Milagros Sala.
Sala to be pardoned now. A democratic government cannot have women political prisoners. We cannot have comrade women who fight for women and indigenous people imprisoned by a government that we elected. So today we demand immediate freedom, a pardon now for Milagros Sala, unjustly imprisoned.
Ecuadorian women took to the streets of Quito and other cities to demand their rights to mark International Women's Day. The women's associations denounced the unconstitutional nature of Decree 604 that establishes the instructions for the application of the pre-legislative consultation for the adoption of executive normative acts. They also demand public policies that address gender issues such as decent work and violence, as well as the right to housing, integral and quality education, physical and mental health. For his part, the president of the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, CONAIE, Leonidas Sisa Salazar, stressed the collective nature of the struggle women are still waging today.
This is a struggle of our fellow women, and it is not only a women's struggle. Therefore, women are committed to join in all struggles to build a society that respects men and the rights of our fellow women. We are going to do three things today. First, to hold an act of solidarity, to light the fire of solidarity with the struggles of the Peruvian people. Second, we're going to present a demand of unconstitutionality of the Decree 604 that supplants the law of prior, free and informed consultation. And third, in the afternoon we will join the march. And what are we demanding? We have to have clear policies to eradicate gender-based violence in our communities.
It is important to say that the objective is not just to celebrate Women's Day. That they sing to us or give us flowers. It's a day of recognition for all women, of the different people and nationalities, of social sectors, of different other areas. Today is a day of reunion and mobilization, and we are here to that end.
Let's take a short break. But first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Venezuela, some women have transitioned from being homemakers to home builders. That's the case of the Anti-Manor Project in Caracas, a poor neighborhood of the Venezuelan capital, where 80% of the workforce is made up of women, most of them single mothers. Some cut reinforcing bars, some prepare concrete mix, and others lay pipes. They are making use of a government program that encourages construction by providing materials and technical guidance to first-time builders at no cost, in a bid to tackle an acute housing shortage in a country battling a severe economic crisis.
I bend rods, I make moorings, we carry sand, we carry blocks, we carry cement. In other words, we do different jobs here. And I really feel good about it. And even more so because it is to get a house for my son's future.
It is the first time I have met a woman who is a rebar master, and I feel even prouder because she is my mother. And even though it is something very exciting. It is something that makes you feel like I would never have thought that my mother would be a rebar master, and neither that we will have this great opportunity to have a house, a home.
And we stay in Venezuela. There, President Nicolás Maduro Moros praised the value of the Venezuelan women at the forefront of the Bolivarian Revolution on the occasion of International Women's Day. The head of state highlighted the women's struggle for their equal participation in the labor market and in society in general. He also pointed out that with the arrival of Comandante Chavez in 1999 and the birth of the Bolivarian Revolution, the Venezuelan woman has played relevant roles in the national arena. President Maduro informed that in order to integrate all government plans to achieve the highest social prosperity for women, he will implement what he called the Great Venezuelan Women Mission.
The time has come to add all the resources. The time has come to add all the energies, all the forces, all the efforts. That is why, today, 8 March, I announce the creation of the Great Women's Mission of Venezuela, which will integrate all the policies, all the efforts, all the attention that we place women at the center of life, of the country, of the life of the Bolivarian government. Great Women's Mission of Venezuela born today, in light of the International Women's Day.
The Venezuelan president also pointed out that in order to guarantee the future of the coming generations, it's necessary to love and protect women.
There is something we can do well for the future of the generations to come. If there is something we must do to guarantee the future of our families, our society, and our country, it is to love and protect women. It is to give everything for Venezuelan women.
And in the aftermath of the 7.8 magnitude earthquake that killed more than 50,000 people in Turkey and Syria, Turkish women deal with added burdens after the disaster. On the streets, many women sleep in the makeshift tents while dealing with poor hygiene conditions, the shame of asking for personal items, and taking on chores such as cooking and cleaning. Meanwhile, social organizations and volunteers highlighted that women and LGBTQI+ people can be very vulnerable to abuse in such disaster situations, hence the need for the government to pay extra attention in helping them. The toll from the 7.8 magnitude earthquake now stands at more than 46,000 in Turkey and nearly 6,000 in Syria, making it one of the world's 10 deadliest of the past 100 years.
There is a particular issue that I have observed with women here. They are not able to ask for their needs, personal needs, especially needs of being a woman from other aid distribution points other than those formed as women's aid units. Since all aid is distributed in public spaces, in zones where everyone is around, women find it hard to ask for the products they need. For example, underwear, bras, wax bands, tweezers, which require humanitarian needs considering that we are talking about a month-long process. Therefore, what they ask from us is mostly for those special products.
In this context, activists also draw attention to the ways in which the aftermath of the disaster situations, such as the February earthquakes, leave vulnerable populations, such as women and LGBTQI+ community, at higher risk of abuse.
LGBTI plus people can be very vulnerable to abuse in such disaster situations. For this reason, in order to maximize their safety and to provide them with a safe space, many of our friends, volunteer friends, comrades, keep watch with us in the tent area with the banner you see behind me, keeping this place safe.
In Georgia, as in response to the violent protests that have taken place in the country, the parliament withdrew a draft legislation on foreign agents. The Georgian Dream, the ruling party that has promoted together with other organizations the draft law on foreign agents, said the Western smear campaigns created a negative perception of the bill rather than its original purpose, which was to ensure financial transparency. The proposed law will require any organizations receiving more than 20% of their funding from overseas to register as foreign agents or face substantial fines. After passing the draft in the first reading, the declarations of Brussels and Washington calling attention to an alleged plan of censorship and regulations that will be taking place opened the door to a series of speculations that later turned into violent protests. On Wednesday, over 60 protesters were arrested outside Parliament in Tbilisi. Earlier, thousands had marched in the streets to rally against the law. TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StoreSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. China confirms it will play a positive role in helping Sri Lanka get through its debt crisis after the island nation said Beijing had agreed to restructure its loans.
Supports relevant financial institutions in actively discussing debt disposal plans with the Sri Lankan side. We also call for fair burden sharing with both commercial and multilateral creditors participating in Sri Lanka's debt restructuring. China is ready to work with relevant countries and international financial institutions to play a positive role in helping Sri Lanka cope with its current difficulties, ease its debt burden, and achieve sustainable development.
And the United States candidate to head the World Bank, Ajay Banga, on Wednesday called for a revamp of the development model to better meet the challenge of climate change. Banga, who is on trip to Kenya, stated that the world cannot continue to pursue the prior model of mission-heavy growth system and rallied for adaptation. The 63-year-old Indian American was last month nominated by the U.S. President Joe Biden to head the global lender after its current chief, David Malpass, announced plans to step down. The nomination comes amid a push for development lenders to revamp and address global problems like environmental issues more effectively. Banga is currently serving as vice chairman at equity firm General Atlantic and was previously chief executive at MasterCard.
My belief is that the going forward economy and growth cannot and should not be conducted in the same emissions-heavy way of the prior 30 years. We cannot afford it. Our children cannot afford it. We should not pursue the prior model of an emissions-heavy growth system. And this Kenya is an example of a country that is trying to change that. People talk about mitigation, people talk about adaptation. These are just words that are used to describe the impact of climate change depending on the situation of your economy. So the answers have to be catered to the situation of your economy.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.